that's the one where people always go, really? Yeah, really. So what I would say to that is, even without the aid in some cases, if you had a cohort of students that wanted a program and you could do it better and cheaper, I believe it's your obligation to do it better and cheaper. I think at that point, they're your kids. BOCES doesn't have any kids. The cooperative has 0 kids. They are all registered students with you or the 8 components. So there are times that we have exceptionally high cost programs. There's no doubt that day treatment is a very high cost program. But with the psychological services and having a psychiatrist on call and all the other things that go along with the therapeutic nature of that program, it's just really high cost. So even when you see that and you say, geez, could we do that cheaper? Lots of times I'll bet they've run the numbers for you because you have very competent administration, and they'll say, actually, by the time we get Medicaid reimbursement and we look at doing it ourselves and the number of students we have, actually we probably can't do it cheaper. But if you can, you should, always. And improve service to pupils. That should be the #1 driver when we talk about program, especially student program things. So this is what, think of BOCES as, don't think of BOCES as. We added this slide actually about 6 years ago because lots of times people were thinking of like BOCES as a place and not as a thing. And BOCES is a cooperative. So BOCES isn't a vendor. I'm going to start on the obviously the negative side. It's not a vendor. It's not a for-profit business. It's not attempting to operate. You know, it has to attempt to operate in the best, serving the best components, serving the needs of the components. BOCES, sometimes we're accused of it. We really cannot act autonomously without districts because we have no kids. And when we get down to a couple more slides, because we have no kids, we have no revenue source. We don't get state aid and we don't collect taxes. So districts purchase programs and services. I kind of hate that, right? Because you're not purchasing it, you're deciding to participate in it. So it's a cooperative of school districts. It really should be seen as just another department, another program of your district. Your district is 100% part owner in it. Operates as the district does, same bylaws, not all the same financial laws because we're a complete sub-zero sum, so everybody gets their money back, what's left over. Acting jointly with districts, and districts participate in programs. So districts choose to be a part of BOCES programming.
If I could,
yeah.
I'll ask a couple questions about your first couple slides. And I'm hoping that this is really going to improve. So you've talked about an arm of the district, you're really part of our district, you're really responsible. I mean, I'm kind of putting words out there, but I don't have that feeling sitting on this board that I understand what you do. Okay? I don't understand what BOCES does, how you're with our strategic plan as a district, the overall leadership and what we're trying to accomplish here as a school district. So I really hope that going forward from today that we really work hard on that, because it's indicative of us not passing your budget. Is that sure. I don't feel that, I think I have a pretty good feel for how the district here works, sitting on the board. I have no idea what you do, and I'm actually an alumnus of BOCES, and I don't have an understanding of what you're doing and what you're trying to get accomplished, and that's really going to, for me, it's really going to be good.
So, and I don't disagree with anything. As I go through this, and you come up with other questions, or I leave here, I want you to come back and tell me, what do you need from me, the BOCES, or the administration that I can give to them so that you have a better understanding of what?
I'm going to say everything.
Okay.
Well, Chris, I will interject on this. I can say one thing that I found very useful being on the board, and it actually did not happen at your board meeting. It actually happened at the audit meeting, where Roseanne came in and explained the programs and what they were. Like, she explained what CARE program is, what Bridges is, why we do it, all of that. She did a fabulous job on it, and I think that's what he's asking.
Okay.
Is program, not just CTE, because everybody thinks that CTE is
right.
BOCES, but the other 90% of BOCES is, like the bridges and the care program and, all of the other
Right.
ones. There's just so much.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you go down and think of BOCES as districts participate in program services, I really don't see that here at my level. Maybe it's just me, I'm not speaking for the board, I'm just talking for me. Acting jointly with districts, right? So for the Board of Education, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing a very big gap between what you're doing and how it's being relayed back to us. And I get the flyer,
Right.
but if we're administratively responsible, right, and it's a cooperative, it's things that we're supposed to be responsible for, I'm just not.
Well, let me just,
I'm not seeing it,
Right.
and I'm not gonna put it on my superintendent, right?
well, no, but we do have chief meetings, so what I can come back to district, the board has never asked for, the notes and basically the main things that would go on in the chief's meeting. But I do talk to Andy about some, things that are going on BOCES program-wise that, for instance, P-TECH is a good example. Anything that developed with P-TECH, I would call Andy up and I'd say, hey, here's the development, this is what's going on, sustainability, things like that. But what I can do is I can do monthly emails to the board and just give updates. Because, we have the chief meetings once a month. I could absolutely do that.
And the other piece is
But here's what I'm gonna say, Tom, and that's great, but I'm not looking to you. I'm looking to you, okay?
and I'm looking at Tom to give me direction, and you to give me direction, to tell me what you need,
Right.
so that we can provide it. So I think we're not far off. We have to establish the way that the communication flow goes, and we gotta stop sort of being the secret up on the hill in Mexico, and have, you're welcome to come and view. But I think that that's sort of where the gap is. The gap really is, so I get hit all the time with, how come you don't have an electrician program anymore? I would if there were students. But a great example of where we do fit into the mission is this entire county did an early literacy movement that has been tremendous. That was facilitated through BOCES. Your people did the work, but the initial facilitation, helping get, secure grant money, those types of things, that's sort of some of the undercurrent BOCES work that we don't know about. And you know what, that's on us for not probably putting that out there more so that you do know. But I'm gonna tell you that if you don't know how BOCES fits in to your overall strategic plan, it's because probably haven't talked about how BOCES fits into your overall strategic plan, because we will provide virtually anything that you need as long as there is another partner, and in almost everything you're gonna be able to find a partner to sort of help provide some of that service. Whether it was energy management contracting, or it's other things, BOCES can help, but it's a co-op. What I don't do is I won't come up with a program and then come here and try to sell it to you. Like, I don't think that that's the BOCES role. I think the BOCES role is to help spawn ideas of new program, have pretty high-level conversation with administration in the districts, and say, if you are willing, this is what we can provide. Why don't you go back and see if that fits into what you need? That's really where we are with what BOCES is.
So, just on that last point, because I agree with what you said, and I personally don't want you to do that. I'm sure you don't want to. You're not a salesman. You're reacting to the needs of your component districts. But one of the things I've always wondered is, as an example, what is the heat map or the coverage map of city BOCES program versus other ones where, for instance, like you mentioned, the electrician program.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we currently aren't saying that we have, quote, the student population to do that, is it a need out there? Is that the market that, because the reality is our students in part will do what teachers and career counselors and guidance counselors talk to them about. If they're saying, hey, this is where jobs are going to be, these are the skills you need to do, this is a good viable field. Because I think a lot of our students in many of these fields say, oh, I'm not going to take that now, like I need to earn a living. They don't understand that you earn a great living.
Right.
So that's just one of the things I think would be really good. I don't want you to be a salesman. How can we go about finding out what we don't do in our component, in our BOCES programs, that other BOCES are doing. And again, it's not you, it's the component districts need to
Right.
say, hey, here's something we should be doing.
I think part of that too with the electrician example is if it's not an option, which it currently isn't, students aren't looking to it. You know, they look
Right.
through the book and they're like, well, what could I do? And if it's not listed, it's not gonna cross their mind as something they're interested
Right.
in. And so then it's gonna continue to be a zero student interest, you know?
Right.
I don't know if it's something that we could incorporate into some sort of survey or, you know, whatever it is, new areas that students would be interested in seeing opportunities available or something like that. But I think not having, you know, whatever's, they don't know what they don't know. And so if
They
it's
don't
not
know.
there, then they're not gonna know.
You know, like, so we didn't have coding a few years ago, so we started coding. Well, coding is coding, right? Like, if you build that, and a couple of people said, yes, I definitely want you to build coding. I have 4 or 5 kids that I know will. That's an easy thing for districts. And I was a superintendent of schools. I could have sold coding to a gazillion kids. I think now we're getting back into a reality that, you know, we can start selling, you know, the basic engineering, the electrical engineering, the basic mechanical stuff again. Whether it's electricity, whether it's whether it's HVAC or some of the things that we don't do that they did 20 years ago. That's sort of coming back. So I think we're looking at sort of a wave trend that we will be adjusting to the realities of what young people and their parents find attractive as we move forward.
And just to piggyback off of what Steve said, in terms of the programming and things like that you talked about, you know, I don't begin to understand all of the offerings that BOCES has, and, you know, to Randy's point, certainly reviewing the book of offerings and stuff it kind of floods over my head because it's a bit overwhelming, but with respect to the budget, and I was one of the people that voted no, one of my concerns was, and you know, you say your district is part owner, is what are the checks and balances that exist with respect to any kind of, you know, when you're creating a program and you're hiring all of the staff that you need to run that program, what are the checks and balances in place at BOCES? So, you know, say you've got a position for teaching, you know, someone how to weld, you know, you're looking for someone to do that, you know, maybe someone would take $75,000 to participate and to teach that class, or, you know, in whatever role the staff is needed in. But what's stopping you from doing 90,000? I'm not accusing anybody of doing that, but I'm
Right.
just saying, like, what checks and balances are there? For us, we have a budget, and every dollar we spend has got to come from somewhere else. But for you, if, you know, the cost gets passed down to the districts, and assuming everyone passes it, we're just, you know, splitting it 8 ways makes it seem like much less of a burden.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, I'd like to have a better understanding as to the fact that you're not, you know, are just handing money out to teachers that, you know, if we hired them ourselves, we might pay $20,000 less for that position. Why is BOCES paying so much?
And
That kind of
it's
thing.
a great question. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to stay as long as you'll have me tonight, but I'm going to come back because there's program budget and there's admin budget. So program budget, the reason I don't hire a teacher, the reason I can't find a heavy equipment teacher or a diesel mechanic instructor is because I pay $52,000 because I have the same type of teacher's contract that you guys have. So as I'm begging, so what I'm doing is we're recruiting directly from Fort Drum, and we're giving Trans A certifications to try to get people to come in at that base pay, because I'm facing the same thing you're facing. I'm facing the fact that, you know, $52,000 is a nice living, but compared to what they're making in the field, like, so basically I don't pay any more for my instructors. But why some of the cost of the program is so high is you might have a special education program, so you have the cost of the teacher. By law, you're required to have the aide in there if it's a 612. We have a therapeutic intervention specialist in there. That's costly. You know, that's going to cost you 75 grand a kid when you take all of their salaries and then add in all of their benefits. So, like, we could go program by program and show you, you know. Sometimes the cost is higher going in.
It's the same effect though if the student moves into the county, like if they move into such a square. You know, if they move into such a square and they're heavily autistic or they're handicapped to some degree, They could cost you $100,000.
Easily,
You know,
easily.
so that could wipe out a budget.
It could wipe, it does, and there are stories within our county within the last few years where like 5 or 6 high-cost children move into a district and budgets have been really tight, right? So it's blowing people's budgets up. Sometimes you'll actually see in a BOCES budget, and I'm just going completely off script. So at the end of the year, we may budget, you may say, across the entire county, here's a good example, because you're gonna see a slight uptick in your refund. And people go, why'd you charge us so much then? Let me explain it. So we may get initial requests, and we may think that we're gonna have 65 students in a 6 to 1 to 2. And at the end of the year, we end up with 85 students in 6 to 1 to 2 programming. But we only had to hire one more teacher, one more aide, one more therapeutic specialist. The counselors could cover it. Everything else was covered. Clearly, the cost of those 20 extra students isn't, like, there's a ton of money left over. And I mean a ton of money. And that's what happened this year. You get that back this year. And you're like, well, it didn't help us last year. No, it didn't. But we build a budget off what's requested, not what actually shows up. And I'm not saying in every case, but when you're budgeting and you're sending an initial budget form to BOCES, people tend to be slightly conservative, especially the fact that we have to build special ed budgets before CSEs have met and IEPs have been determined. I know it's crazy, right? So we build a budget base the cost of that program based on how many students we were anticipating to come in. We get 20 more kids, our costs only go up an additional $150,000. That's gonna leave an excess of $900,000 in that one line item that then gets redistributed back in a refund the following year. Sometimes we'll run short on a program by $200,000 because we'll think 30 kids are coming into day treatment and 22 kids come into day treatment, and then basically it's within your own budgets. That's not socialized. So within your own budget, before we figure out your refund, we would look at the number of kids that you actually sent to day treatment versus the overall percentage of kids that were there, and we would deduct some of that money out, but then you get the rest of that money back. So I know I'm in the weeds.
No, because this was actually, I think, a big part of our conversation back at budget time. Because one of the things that stuck out from what I remember from the presentation on the budget was that refund, and it was a large chunk. And our real question was, it's a large chunk and it doesn't seem to fluctuate. So if, for instance, if the 10-year average is that large chunk,
Yep.
then why not cut it in half, right? That gives some wiggle room back into the component districts. And I get, the once a decade storm type of scenario, that's one way to look at it.
Mhm.
So that's one of the pieces of information I think down the road would be good to look at is, if we're consistently refunding, and I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but let's say it was $60,000 to Central Square District.
Yeah, it's
That-
way more than that.
Oh, I know, yeah, I'll be conservative. But if we're refunding that much, why
Yep.
don't we start to cut that chunk down? Because that does shift some of it back into our flexibility then, whereas right now it's not.
And
I was gonna say, so let me get in the weeds here with you.
I was about ready to.
Use your microphone.
When we build our budget.
That's your button.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
When we build our budget, on our expenditure side, we can never be over budget.
Right.
So we try to go large. So if I think 100 kids are going to CTE, we're gonna build it for 110. We think 28 kids are going to all the special programs, we can build it for 30. On the flip side of that, I'm building in the refund, that's what's in that $1.5 million miscellaneous revenue. So how they build big or small is gonna affect us big or small in the same way. Does that make sense? So if their prices were to come down and our expenditures were to go down, the corresponding revenue on our side is also gonna go down.
It totally makes sense. The only, it's all in the way you look at it, right? So I'm not saying I'm right, but as a taxpayer, if I know that on a 10-year average, we are consistently that much over, as a taxpayer, I'm gonna say, well, how about you get closer to reality? The last thing I wanna do is put the district or BOCES in a position of, you know, you're at the line and you still have 300 miles to go. I get that. But it feels like we have that budget or that cushion built in. I'm not saying I'm right, but that's the
No,
feeling.
it's built in, but it doesn't affect the levy.
Right.
Because it's on both sides.
So really, the only year that it affected us was the first year,
Correct,
because we didn't have it on the other side.
correct.
And we could make it tighter, but if we made it tight, and in a couple of program lines, the enrollments didn't end up matching what was submitted to us, and now we're running a deficit, I come to you in April at the worst time possible and say, you owe money on this, this, and this. I think that could be far more damaging than, but what you're gonna see this year is you're actually gonna see an uptick in what it is, right? In your refund, it's gonna be more. And people get, how can it be more? It's more because we had almost 20 kids more enroll in 612 programming. Autism was up a significant number with no additional staffing having to be made. And we're self-insured. Our third-party insurance provider, which basically it's our money, they help us manage it. We started another new drug program. We already do mail-in, but now we're doing something with a company out of Canada. The money we saved on prescription drugs this year was just, you could not have predicted it. So next year, you won't see the same bump because now we can predict the healthcare savings. And I don't think we'll ever see that greater fluctuation in a couple of individual, very, very high-cost programs, you know. If you get a bump in speech or audiology, you don't even see that, right? Because it's just so minor because the cost of individual services for those students is so minor. But when you get those high cost programs and you get a big bump like that, you're gonna see some fluctuations. But I get where you're coming from. Because when I came here, I'm like, you know, how big's our budget? Our average refund annually is like 4.2 million. Most of that is almost, a lion's share is coming out of healthcare savings. So some years we have good years health-wise, so we don't have a lot of catastrophic illness. So those years we have really good years. And our healthcare rates are very good. Our family rates are very competitive. So I know I'm under the weeds on that. But one thing I do want, at some point, I want you to understand the difference between program budget and admin budget. Because I know the admin budget going up over, you know, it was going up, I don't even know what it went up last year. It was like,
I think it was like 7.
7%, 6
And that-
something.
The big question around the table seemed to be, because it was primarily retirement costs, that it was
All
a big jump.
All retiree health.
Yep, and while it's understandable, I think many people ask, you know, for more information, and that was another area where
Right.
more information on what you're doing, because we know what we're doing to try to curb those big jumps.
Right.
You know, what is city doing in that department?
Well, I can talk to you about the contracts that we've settled, and I'll be very brief. I can't talk to you about the contracts we haven't because Perb hates that for some reason. We're 80/20 insurance, so we're at 20% copay. Right now, we are trending, I'm not saying that everybody else will be, but we have significant numbers of bargaining units that have agreed in principle. The board will be getting it Wednesday, at least 1 or 2 of them. So we're 80/20. We're gonna be the highest in the county. We're gonna be the highest individual percentage contributing. We're self-insured, which means we're already paying probably a smaller premium than most. And like I said before, prescription drugs is killing everybody. So we're literally grasping at straws to see what we can do with prescription drugs. You know, and that's a big one. And I understand, like, you have a 2% tax cap, whatever it is. It could be 1.2, it could be 3.5, right? And then you see my admin budget going up, you know, 7%. People are like, how can that be? That's not that. The reality of it is that, yeah, my admin budget did, but if you look at the program side of things, lots of other things went down. So the overall budget to budget, probably, the overall cost, and it would be different for individual districts based on your subscription, your shares, was, 3.5, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, but 3.5 doesn't work. It's not sustainable,
None of this is sustainable.
okay?
You are 100% right.
So when you say 3.5, I say no. I'd like to say yes,
Right.
but I can't say yes.
But I voted yes on your budget because I live here, knowing you were stuck at a 2% tax cap, knowing your spending plan was going up about 6 to 7%. You saying no based on percentage would have been the same reason I would say no based on percentage, based on what I know about where your budget was versus where your tax cap is. We're comparing apples and oranges when we're looking at it that way. Where did the rest of your revenue come from? If you were frozen at 2% tax, the rest of your revenue came from state aid or expense-driven aids. One of your major drivers of expense-driven aid is the money you get back on your BOCES aid. So if you look at your budget went up more than 2%. It had to pay for healthcare costs, to keep the lights on. So what happens is the state subsidizes that through foundation aid and expense-driven aids. So all I would ask that, when you look at my admin budget, I would want you to look at it as a whole, but also look at it, how much revenue is that generating to help you make up your gap from your 2% to make it to your 7%.
Well, that comes to my next question, and really, I'm going to draw in Maureen to keep me from sending anything out of turn. So, out of our 9.4 million for the budget, right, we have state aid of 3,977. So now, is that individually, is that BOCES aid, or is that aid that we would get normally?
No, that's BOCES aid.
So that's BOCES aid. So out of the 9 million that we're going to spend,
Mhm.
right, 3.5 or 3 almost 4 million of that is aided. So if we didn't have
Any of that there.
any of that
Would
there,
not receive any aid. on
so we
the
wouldn't
other
receive
side.
any of the
Right.
aid. Okay.
And aid is driven on everything, for the most part, except all the special ed programming.
Right. Actually, Pearl, we've moved to that, it's a slide that's down pretty far about what's aidable and what's not, because that's the other thing that I never want people, yeah, right there, I never want people thinking that everything is aidable. Because adult ed isn't aidable, but you're not really paying any adult ed costs, that's a standalone budget. Special education services are aided through your excess cost aid if you meet a certain threshold in cost. So if a special needs child doesn't meet a threshold, you don't get anything. But once they go over that, you get a percentage back. Health services to non-public school students, you don't get that back. You probably don't have a lot of that. Municipal services, pre-K services, transportation services, because you get trans aid. So even if you do joint transportation projects or runs with BOCES, you get a direct aid of approximately probably 90% or very close to it, probably very close to it from the state. And services funded from other sources, like if you pay for something through a grant and then you use BOCES to sort of make it better or make it a big enough cohort of kids, you don't get aid on that either. So.
Chris, is there any, because we clearly got you totally off your,
That's all right.
your schedule thing, which is fine, but are there any other major points you want to make sure, because like you said, this is not a one and done, this is the beginning of the
Yeah.
conversation. Don't worry, we're not gonna have you back every month.
Why not?
So I'm also doing OCM BOCES for the foreseeable future, so that's, my calendar has become, my dance card's pretty full.
So to that point, one of the things, and I'll just do it now because it makes sense, to let the rest of the board know, I talked to our city board rep, Mrs. Haskins, and, we need to do a better job too as a board. So I asked Vanessa if it was all right, so we're gonna have her as a standing first meeting of the month on the agenda. Anything she wants to share as far as what's going on in BOCES, new things. If there's nothing, we take her off the agenda, fine, but at least if it's on there, we don't, it's out of sight, out of mind, right? So we're gonna do some things differently and try to be in it a little bit.
And I think
So-
that's great. And there are some boards that do that, and there are some boards that don't, but, you know, I'll tell you what, I've never seen anybody come in and study harder for a job that we're never gonna pay her for. She's
We didn't
literally,
know
you know, learning, so. You know, I hope I didn't come across as confrontational. But what I want is for people to understand that we're not a business, we're here to provide the best for our kids. And it's really through my poor communication that we are at a place where people are questioning, where's the value add, right? So that is 100% on Chris Todd. And I can come up with every excuse in the world why I've been absent. But the reality of it is that I will answer any questions, I will take calls directly from board members, I will sit with you, I will explain it all. But because the budgeting process is so different for the co-op than it is for you, we sometimes try to do comparisons that just don't match up. And I have done a really poor job over the last few years of being a little more present with you guys, and I'm not gonna allow that to happen again.
I appreciate you saying that. Sorry, who was
That was me. I don't know if we're necessarily trying to compare the two entities here, but in the budgets and all the processes that go on behind the scenes. But my recollection of the meeting, that which we voted on the budget, where I had a lot to say about it, and I voted yes, out of my ignorance, out of the processing and all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. But when we were sitting there getting told nonchalantly that this was going to go up by X percentage, that's not a nonchalant thing to pitch. And I'm not asking for an answer, I'm not asking for any words at this point. I'm just saying to you, walking away, maybe the next time we meet, take a look at how that was pitched and say, all right, maybe we need to do a little bit better job of leading into that meeting with some advisory tidbits to say, okay, this is kind of where we're at, this is what we're trending, this is what we're kind of seeing, because to me, I came from 25 years in the military. Doing more with less is the norm. It's the only norm. So to hear things going up when your program costs, your program burdens are going down maybe, and maybe I don't understand the whole system, doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. So I'm not looking for an answer, just throwing that out there to you. That's my recollection of how this was pitched to us, and maybe we can communicate better going on in the future.
We will. We will, and if we don't, vote your conscience. If we don't do what we say we're gonna do, that would be, obviously, I'm not gonna say fine, but I will do a better job.
I just want, I think too, as a board member, if we have certain questions that we're not clear about, I think we need to reach out to Tom and Maureen and say, can you give us some, background into this? And then have them relay to either to us or maybe schedule something with Chris or with Mike. And, if we have a board retreat, maybe that's something we can add to the board retreat.
Because, and I'll kind of close on this. It is clear you support BOCES. Look at the number of students that you send to entrust us to do what's right by them.
I think they just don't understand the budget of the BOCES, because it's so different. Like you're doing an administrative budget. I mean, you get caught in the minutia of all the budgets that BOCES has. And if I remember correctly, Mike's saying there's like 150 different budgets at BOCES.
157.
Yes. So you get caught up in that thought process, and you got administrative, and then you're thinking that's everything.
Right.
It's really not.
Right.
Well, I'll just talk to you about my position of it. So out of a, how many $1 million budget do we talk about here?
We are about an $80 million budget.
$80 million, we're talking about $9 million of that. Okay, so it's 10%, 12%, and I'll state it tonight, and it's the same thing when we voted, because I supported it because I wouldn't have supported it if I hadn't indicated that I didn't really have any question. That I don't know that much about 10% of our school budget, okay? It's really that simple.
I get it.
And if you were to come up to me as a citizen and say, hey, do you know about 10% of the school budget? Because we spend an awful lot of time on budgets here. We really do. And we get talked about it a lot. And say, well, I know 90% of it, but the other 10, I really don't know how it gets done. So that's the gap for me.
I get it.
It's understanding, because that's a lot of money. It's $10 million. It's
Yeah.
a lot of money. We're not a smaller school, as I said to the presenter when we got the presentation. We're the big dog in this fight, okay? So Central Square, if I'm sitting here on the board and I don't really have a good understanding of it, you know, it's really, it's up to everyone for us to fully understand how we're spending $10 million a year. It's really that simple.
I agree, and you know what, it's gonna be two-part, right? Some of it's the numbers, and some of it is, I want you to come and see it, right? Like, you get to walk the halls here, you get to see where your money is. You know, it's here, it's there. You don't get to see where your money goes. I'm gonna invite all of you to come, and we will, you know, we'll do the CTE stuff, but then we'll go to 4th Street, and we'll see, you know, our kids at 4th Street, and we'll give you a look at. I have to get you guys to understand the value added, or this is for naught.
And that's a great point, because I mean, if they were to see some of the program, like the Bridges program, things that we, right now, and we are gonna be doing some things with CSI in 2021, bringing back program and whatnot. But I do think that's a really good point. They were, you know, be able to see that. But the other point too is, we are all about college and career readiness, and that's multiple pathways. So there was a time where there was kind of that unspoken cap of 100 students going to CTE. And I remember 5 years ago when I started, there were parents saying, oh, my kid was heartbroken because he wanted to go into this, he wanted to go into that. And in fairness, it's not a knock on our business department or our former superintendent. There's a budget, there was a plan, and it was this much that was allocated for that. Well, then we had to be creative in shifting where money was coming, because we want to be able to not have it fake and say, hey, here are these pathways. Wow, you were really perfect for this fit, but sorry, you would have been 101. So with that, that was about 40 more kids going, another $1 million to be able to send them. So that's where we can also do a better job in showing the board and saying, you know, next time we have our counseling department, Kristen Enright present, to show how many more students are going to it. But I want to take that a step further. Remember when I had talked to you about getting that statistics of students that went through BOCES that are actually working in the field right now?
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to students and said, hey, Mr. Kalufo, I went to BOCES, I'm making 72 grand welding. I went to Central Square when there was that negative kind of feeling about going to BOCES. I'd love to come back, so we're tapping these kids to come back to speak, but that's another point that I want to be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, that, and I'll get the College Board information again so you can see the sustainability of your 2- and 4-year college entrance. People are always shocked at that. You know, let me know what you need to get us to where we sort of need to be. You know, I always want you to challenge me to be frugal. It's your job, right? So,
I think we do see the value added. I think we're highly supportive of pretty much anything that comes down the pipe. We just want to better understand what's behind the curtain, because that's where our money goes. When we're paying X number of millions of dollars and we're seeing this increase behind the curtain, I want to see what's behind the curtain,
absolutely.
right? Am I wrong?
And
So the value added's there, we know it. I mean, you can see that in kids' faces. I've been up there, I've been at the fairgrounds with him. It's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We need to know what's going on behind the curtain.
Yep.
And since we are one of the big dogs on campus, I think it's only right that we have a better understanding of that.
You guys identify the curtain, and I will come and be completely transparent with what the cost drivers are. Whether it's a program, whether it's the admin budget, whether it's, you know, instructional support, technology, you pick, we can break them all down, and that actually is a fun exercise. That sounds nerdy, but that's a fun exercise.
So, Chris, to support everything that has been said, and just to let you know that it really isn't, it's not like we're just expecting you to do something different, we need to do something different. So next week, the Oswego County School Board Association has set up a meeting with the president of the Central New York School Board Association, and one of the points that we're gonna bring up to them is, you guys are doing nothing to help your represented districts partner with and understand the different BOCES organizations. Not once have they ever, they're the place where we should be getting part of our training and education on what we're doing as board members. Not once have they discussed BOCES. So it's not just directed at you, it's everyone needs to do a better job of understanding this is not a sliver, it's in some districts more than 10% of their budget. And it's important to the kids, more importantly.
Yeah, truthfully, like, in some of the smaller districts, it's a much larger percentage that they count on for. But I mean this wholeheartedly, you know, like, I'm a community member, I care about this district, I care about the entire community. You decide what you need, and I will be back. I will be back. I should be doing one job by the end of January again, but I'll come back before that, if you ask. So,
Awesome.
Thank you,
Well,
Chris.
I appreciate you taking the time, and like
Thank
you said,
you.
multiple jobs, so
Yeah.
thanks for coming
Yeah.
over.
Alright.
OCM, can you look to see what programs that they have that we can,
So on the CTE side, phlebotomy is the only one. We actually offer more programming at City BOCES than they do at OCM BOCES.
Okay. Now, is that distinguished from, now, we were at the school board conference in Placid, we saw presentations by Syracuse. Is that just the district offers?
That's
not
just the
through
district
BOCES?
offering.
Okay, but that's something that BOCES could
Right.
potentially offer, all the programs that they
Right.
have.
as long as you have a coaster?
Yeah, they got into like diesel mechanics, and now, perfect example, kid lives across the street from me, 2 years in college,
Yeah,
just trained on, he's making 70 grand.
yeah.
Yeah, but they used to have that program, they used to have the biodiesel program, and districts got rid of it.
Some of it was, what happens is you lose an instructor, like, you either have to find somebody who's passionate about teaching, that's gonna come in and do it for less than the industry standard salary. You know, they would say they do it for the big.
Not to be a jerk, but, I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of got a little insight on this, so I know my daughter, we were talking about, you guys are hiring for a new nursing teacher.
Yes.
And, you know, I said, oh, it's probably about $40,000-$50,000. She goes, no, I wouldn't do it. And she's in college.
Yeah, right,
So
right.
and she's like, I could make more by being at the hospital.
Savannah's the
That's the
same way.
problem.
She'd be like, no, I'll be a traveling nurse for
Yep.
a lot more than
Yep.
that, pay off my student loans. So there is some niceties about me doing a couple different jobs, but the reality of it is that I'm your district superintendent. I want you to feel like I'm accessible. And Tom has my number. Talked to him 3 times today.
Well, listen, it would be a great way to wrap up if you wanted to announce are you running for state ed commissioner?
So no, no, and no. But I am, watch the news, I don't know what's gonna happen there. But I'm not, no, because I think that board will be making the sole decision as to who's gonna run the state in the future.
Probably worth being taped.
Yeah. Good one, Tom, no.
I'll call you.
All right, that's fine. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris, appreciate it.
Oh, Chris, you got your keys, or you're not getting.
Oh, jeez. That would have been an embarrassment re-entrance, right? Just come over.
Back already?
Thanks.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Chris.
Take care, guys. Be well.
All right. All right, so with that, we're gonna move into our modified agenda. So remember, this is where we're gonna move things up. So we're gonna go into executive session, which I'll make that motion in a minute, and then come out, vote on item H, and then continue on. So I make a motion that the Central Square School District Board of Education move into executive session to discuss matters leading to the employment of a particular person with action to follow. Can I get a second?
Second.
Mr. Loy, any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
7:27.